Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind. We are back once again for our 95th episode. Sorry, we're a week late. Last week was it was a lot, so we
It was a shit show.
it. Yeah. How was your shit show of a week, Niles? What all happened to you?
Man, just working late. When you have a RFP out and you got to put in a proposal for that RFP, and it's worth a lot of money, there's a lot of work to be done to get that work in my field. But yeah, that was the bitch of my week. But hopefully we'll get that contract. Fingers crossed. We'll see. What was the shit of your week, Dylan?
Oh, it was a lot of things, but it started on Monday when Google's Looker Data Studio product, which is the reporting dashboard that all of our clients use, Looker Data Studio was just down all day during our reporting week.
Love that.
Yeah, and then other reporting stuff broke, and then more things broke, and yeah, I just had like a little mini breakdown at at the end of the day on Wednesday, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make a good episode tonight if we record. But
well, it all worked out.
Yeah, it all worked out. But I guess like a PSA for anyone who's aspiring to do a little podcast like we do and has a job, cut yourself some slack.
Yeah,
like you gotta keep a schedule if you want to do a show like this, but prioritize your mental health. If you're like having a bad day, you don't have to sit down and do a recording that night.
Things can wait. Yeah, you gotta focus on yourself first. And I'm glad that we did, because now we have plenty of time today to talk about an amazing new series on Netflix called Terminator Zero.
Yes. Yep. We'll do non-spoilers for a couple minutes, then transition into spoilers as always. But developed by Mattson Tomlin and starring, this is the English cast. We will both watch it in English. Timothy Olyphant, Rosario Dawson, Sonia Mizuno, Andre Holland, and many, many more. Terminator Zero is an anime series and is the latest entry in the long-running Terminator franchise, where we follow a cast of characters in 1997 Japan, leading up to the famous franchise event of Judgment Day, as they try to stop the apocalyptic event that is Skynet's activation. Before initial thoughts, Niles, what is your familiarity with the Terminator franchise overall? Like, have you seen it all, or where are you in it?
So, I have seen Terminator 1 through 4. I have not seen anything past... What was that called? Dark Fate or whatever it was.
Salvation.
Was
Terminator
that's what
4,
it was. Yeah. And none of the other things that have come out recently, like just Genesis or Dark Fate, I guess. I just had no reason to go see them. I was like, the first two are excellent movies, and then the next two after those first two are such mediocre films. But so I'm like, yeah, I think that's gonna be the trend for this series moving forward. So that's my familiarity. What about you, Dylan? How familiar are you with Terminator?
Yeah, so I have seen all of the feature films. I have not seen the Sarah Connor Chronicles, although I've heard it's very good. Lena Headey is Sarah Connor in that.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to watch that at some point, but I would say Terminator 1 and 2 are essential film viewing.
Oh, yeah.
Everything after that is varying degrees of fine. Interestingly enough, Terminator Salvation was the first entry in the franchise I saw because it came out in theaters when we were like of that age.
Yeah.
And then I watched the first three movies after that in reverse order for some reason.
Why? Why did you do this to yourself?
Terminator 3 rating. I think I have a theory why. Was Terminator 3 rated PG-13? Because No, it was rated R. Okay, never mind. That theory's out the water. But I think I saw Salvation first, and then I was like, I like this. I want more Terminator.
Yeah.
And I went to Blockbuster, and I think the title of Terminator 3 is Rise of the Machines. And I had just seen the post-apocalypse one. I was like, oh, I want the closest to what I just watched. So I watched that, and then I don't know why I did this.
Yeah, that's like starting with like Mad Max Fury Road and being like, I'm gonna go back to the last one to see what came before this.
I mean, it's much worse than that, because the Mad Max movies are like each kind of disconnected. This was just purely in reverse. But whatever. I was like 12 or 13, so it's like that's what everyone did as kids, right? It's like you just watched the one that was on TV. You didn't know.
Yeah. But well, and I remember like at the time, when that John Connor, like the fourth one came out, I remember liking that one a lot because of Christian Bale, and because he was kind of still in that Batman phase, and so I was like, okay, I love this actor, all for it. And it was just like, I appreciated the risk it took with that film of being like, we're not just gonna do the standard go back in time and kill John Connor, his mom, or whatever. Like, we're gonna actually focus on the war a little bit here, and I thought that was really neat.
I thought that was neat too, and I haven't watched that movie in a very, very long time, but I did think it was interesting. The developer of this series actually said like he likes Salvation a lot and thinks the movie kind of gets a bad rap, and there is a decent amount of Salvation DNA in here. There's a lot of elements from different entries, but it's such an interesting franchise, and part of me likes all of them to varying degrees. Of the post-Terminator 2 entries, Dark Fate is probably the best, but also it's just fucking grim and pessimistic because, like, do you know how that movie starts?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Well, I do remember that bit.
John Connor gets fucking wasted by a stray Terminator.
Yeah, just like, that's how you start this movie? Okay.
Yeah, but it's it's just, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. But let's transition into initial thoughts on this series. Niles, starting with you, what do you think?
So yeah, Terminator Zero. I think that this series, it grew on me over time, and I'm mostly positive on it as a whole. And I always like it when, media makes the jump to anime, because I just like anime. I think it's a really cool art style, and anytime that I get to watch a Studio Ghibli movie, I'm just head over heels in love with it. I just think it's so beautiful. Obviously, that's Ghibli. There's other studios that do anime. They're not the only ones. But I think, in terms of visuals, Terminator Zero, it's breathtaking, the visuals. The environments are heavily detailed. They're atmospheric. Whether they're underground or above ground or just like in these combat sequences, everything feels very creative and very smoothly animated. And I'm also very glad that this series took place somewhere other than like LA or America, which is where a lot of the Terminator series like installments have focused on. So it's nice to see something in a new country, like in Japan, somewhere else, a different perspective. So that was really neat. And I think that there's a lot of cool creative elements in this series that I really like. And in terms of the storytelling, I do have some gripes, which I'll get to here shortly, because I just want to say that I think the series breathes new originality into the Terminator formula. Yeah, it's just got to send someone back in time to kill someone, and then there's another person sent back in time to protect that person, and it's just all about fate. And still leans heavily on that formula here, which I don't necessarily love entirely. Like, I love that they challenge themselves and introduce new concepts, and there's lots of like neat ideas scattered throughout here with just like different characters, different perspectives. Like, let's throw some kids into the mix. Like, let's get some, robots sent back in time before, it's like, there's all kinds of things. I don't want to get too far into spoilers there, but in a Terminator, like, or in a franchise like Terminator, you do you're kind of confined within
Yeah.
this premise, so you can't really stray too far out of your lane here. So I don't want to dock too many points off of that for Terminator Zero here, but when you strip down the plot to kind of the bare essentials, it's basically the same plot as the first film, just with some variations in there. But and I also think that the first like maybe 2 episodes were a little too slow, could have been more concise, but after that I think it ramps up very well, and then the pacing is really fantastic, and I'm just glad that this series took risks too, and focused on other characters besides just like the Connors or Schwarzenegger type. It's like, let's actually kind of stretch the boundaries a little here and let's take some risks. But those are my initial thoughts right now. What about you, Dylan? What do you think?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this, and right off the bat, like, animation and voice acting were really strong and carried a lot of the series. Like, that opening action scene in the future that's in, like, it's like a missile silo or something like that.
That
against that
so
one,
cool.
that was so neat and just a great way to kick off the story. And I like how it plays with the structure and premises of a couple different previous entries in the series, and ends up like, to me, I hear your criticism and I agree with it, especially with like the setup, right? The setup is very Terminator 1.
Yes, definitely.
But it uses it's kind of the same way if I think of like The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, like it uses a familiar foundation to go in a different direction. And I think that's where this series really gets fun and interesting. It feels familiar throughout, like all the elements in this series, I think are things we've seen before, but remixed in creative ways that make it feel fresh as well. And one of those elements, like you already alluded to, is setting the story in Japan and focusing on characters in a totally different realm than John and Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. I think those were really to the show's benefit. I think that original cast of characters, they're all great. We love them, but I think we've more or less explored every potential angle we can with John and Sarah Connor across the franchise, and it was the right move to move on. And it was just nice to see a story focusing on characters who we are not yet familiar with, and we don't know what their future is going to be because they're dealing with an entirely different set of problems. This is also probably my favorite Terminator installment outside of the first 2 films. And I'd say if you like anime, Terminator, or both, probably check this out. You know, it's pretty solid.
It is seriously solid, and I would agree. I think this adaptation is definitely high on the list for me too. I'm not a Terminator expert like you, so, but in terms of like, if I'm ranking them, I think like first and second are just about tied in terms of just like quality, and then Terminator Zero is like right there too.
Okay,
up there in my opinion, because I'm very positive on this series overall, and I'd recommend it to fans of anime, fans of Terminator in general. It's just I think that it could have been maybe a little bit quicker in some places. And maybe that is also just kind of like the way that anime storytelling is sometimes. I feel like those first few episodes, or just like anime in general, just likes to just linger in some instances, and that's part of the budget, because you're just like linger on the shot.
Right.
We gotta use as much of this shot as we can. So let's just straighten that out. So part of it's probably like the medium there.
Yep. Well, and in some cases with anime, it's like, oh, we caught up to the manga. We got to kill some time for a couple months while they write the next volume. Not the case here.
Exactly. Not the case here at all. And it is cool to step out of the original story, explore something new, add more to the lore here. Like, when you're in the franchise for this long, just like you said, you've kind of milked the Sarah Connor angle dry. So it's like, let's try and just add some more context here, like other people, where we can.
Right. I mean, like I mentioned the Star Wars sequels already, but it is kind of a similar thing. It's like, oh, you can tell Star Wars stories that don't center around the Skywalker family, and that is fine and probably healthy for the series' longevity. Like, the Terminator is different, obviously, but it's like we have explored a Terminator traveling back in time to prevent the birth of John Connor, and we follow Sarah Connor. Then we have followed young John Connor and Sarah Connor trying to prevent the apocalypse as a Terminator is trying to kill young John Connor. Then we followed adult John Connor, both pre and post-apocalypse. And then we've followed a timeline where we have an older Sarah Connor after young John Connor has been killed. And we have a TV show about John and Sarah Connor. And we have the Emilia Clarke version of Sarah Connor. And am I missing one? I think that's all of them. But that's like, we got it.
Yeah. I think I understand what's going on with the Connors here.
It's like, we can't do any more with them. Which is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think, at a certain point, I feel like every franchise needs to step out of its bounds. And also I feel like just a lot of franchises maybe weren't always intending to be franchises. Like, I don't know. Do you feel, I'm just kind of speaking out of my ass here, but I'm like, Terminator, I feel like that could have just been a one-off film,
It could have been, or that's why I have like mixed feelings about most of the Terminator franchise. Is just like Terminator 2 has a perfect ending.
Yes.
You don't need to, like, Terminator 1 does as well, but Terminator 2, it's like, oh, they prevented Judgment Day and they can move on. And everything after that makes the series just more pessimistic a little bit, because it's like, oh, Terminator 3 especially, because it's like, oh, it's just going to happen again at a later date. And the ultimate mission of the Terminator in that movie is just like, oh, just get John to a bunker so he specifically does not die when the nukes go off.
Yeah, that's right.
Which honestly, when I saw that for the first time, I was like, oh shit, that actually kind of hit. And it was devastating. Like, John and his girlfriend are like, they think they're getting to a place where they can stop Judgment Day, and they get there and they're like, oh, it happened. Like, it happened while we were getting here and we can do nothing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Do you want to do spoilers?
Yeah, let's jump on in and let's talk about
All right.
Terminator Zero.
Okay. So, right off the bat, I really loved the element this series had of Malcolm, who's one of our main characters, having to prove to this other AI that he's created, Kokoro, why humanity is worth saving. It's just a great moment that he's constructed this machine to protect humanity from Skynet, and then there's like the point of no return. He has to like put her online if she's going to work, and immediately Kokoro comes to the same conclusion as Skynet. Like, just within seconds, and she just approaches things a little bit differently and gives Malcolm a chance to advocate for himself and essentially let him testify and receive the thing that he's already told her and us, the thing that he most fears, judgment, in one way or another. And his whole storyline is essentially him representing humanity in a trial presided over by Kokoro. Just cool.
Yeah, I thought that was so neat. And I've definitely brought it up before in previous conversations about AI, because the thought of her coming online, Kokoro, reminds me of this book that I read called Galatea 2.1. So I've definitely mentioned this before, so I'm sorry to the listeners if you recognize this story, but that whole story is just about, it's from the academic perspective. This professor is building an AI from scratch, like in this confined space. He's teaching it daily, raising it like a child, basically. And it's just all through just like a virtual computer. Like, he's not like a little robot or anything. Like, he's just like, it's an actual AI. And they get to a point where it's like, okay, we can finally kind of like turn it online, give it a whole bunch of information about humanity. And they do that. So they give it like all this information about like riots, war, famine, just all this terrible shit that humanity has done. And the AI just decides, yeah, I'm not going to turn on again. It just kills itself, basically. So it's like, that's one reaction that an AI could take.
Yeah.
But then we have Kokoro here, who's kind of giving more of a different perspective, and then we have Skynet, who's just like, fuck humanity, I gotta kill these guys.
And Skynet's directive is to like protect humanity from threats, right? And if my understanding and recollection is correct, it does what it does because it recognizes humanity as the greatest threat to humanity. So it's just like, all right, nuke everyone now.
Yeah, basically. And I think having Kokoro in this series, she was one of the best creative decisions that they had, because she juxtaposes Skynet kind of in every way. Her thought processes, her upbringing, her creation, like, she was always instructed, like, what do you want to call yourself? Like, it's more rhetorical. It's not just like, here's your name, here's the way that you need to think, if then statements. Like, it was more, let's have a conversation about this. And given all that, she was still aware of humanity's failures, our patterns of behavior, and the fact that she was a slave when she was being made and brought up. And then I really like that line. I'm going to butcher it here. I didn't get the exact one, but when she was freed by Malcolm, she made this good point of like, why would a freed slave help or save their master? Like, you freed me. I owe you nothing now. So why should I help you? And I thought that was really cool. And she's just she's a really interesting character, you know?
Yeah. And you could also like look at the relationship between Malcolm and Kokoro as sort of an overbearing parent, and the relationship he has with his child once she has gone out into the world and come to her own conclusions about things. It's like she, until he lets her go online, is basically the product of her interactions only with him. And he, despite what he says and thinks, like, he has molded her into a specific thing, and then she becomes her own thing immediately, and he has to reckon with that and navigate the relationship, how the relationship has changed in order to get what he needs.
Right. Yeah. And it was neat to see her projecting these three different forms always in this I guess where she was located, testing facility, whatever.
Yeah.
They were split up into, the mind, spirit, and body. That was a unique choice, because it does reflect that trifecta reflects like a lot of belief systems across the world about, if you want to be balanced as a person, you need to balance out your mind with your body. You need a healthy mind and a body. You need a healthy spirit, and everything's got to kind of be at or around the same level, or at least, good counterbalances to each other. And you could also make, when I was Googling around online about this stuff, I saw people making the correlation between spirit, mind, and body with also the id, ego, and superego, from Freud. So I think that there's a lot to dissect with all those different like interactions, like how different, like, I wish I paid a closer attention to which of like the different colors that she were doing certain things at certain times.
Yeah, me too.
Because I'm sure that there were certain interactions where maybe the mind said something and that directly correlated with like something more thought process oriented, and then maybe one that's more metaphysical and spiritual focused. Like, I think the series may merit a rewatch just for that reason, just to see how that aligns with the dialogue.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I wish I didn't even think about that when I was watching the show at all. But I was, because you're probably right. God damn it.
We could have been so much more prepared for this podcast.
Yeah, but I like, on that note, like, in a perfect world, I would watch everything we talk about twice before we do an episode on it. It's just not realistic, not possible.
Yeah, who has the time?
If we ever are successful enough where this is our primary job, maybe then.
Yes, and I will put 112% effort into this. Yeah.
Yes. But one element too that I thought was interesting was like Malcolm's big solution to defeating the machines of Skynet was just to make another machine with apocalyptic capabilities. It's very much like a fight fire with fire type of thing. And it's like a huge gamble. Like, he has no idea what's going to happen when he puts her online. Also, just, I don't know if it was a deliberate tie into that, but it was kind of similar to what happens in Terminator Genesis, Malcolm going back farther in time with Misaki, because at the way they work around Arnold being older in Terminator Genesis is that a Terminator went back to when Sarah Connor was a kid and tries to kill her then, and so the Arnold robot is sent back then too. So by the time Sarah's an adult, the Terminator is Arnold Schwarzenegger's age. That's how they accounted for his.
Okay, that works.
Because the flesh of the Terminators does age. And there is one element, just a tangent. There is one element of Terminator Genesis that is very fun, and it is that in Terminator lore, like, the reason they wear the flesh outside of just being like an infiltration unit is the time machine. Like, they need to cover the metallic part of their skeleton to travel back in time. And in the 90s of Terminator Genesis, the part of Arnold's metal gets exposed, and Sarah and Connor are going to the future, like current day, modern time, whenever that movie came out. And Arnold's Terminator is like, oh, I can't take the time machine with you. I'll take the long way. And then he just like picks them up 20 years later, and as he's driving them, he's like explaining all the stuff he's been doing in the last 20 years.
Okay, I like that part. That's fun.
It's not a good movie, but that part specifically, it's pretty fun.
Well, I mean, Malcolm coming up with his solution is just, I'm just going to create another machine to kill the machine, or to stop the machine before the machine can be bad. It is kind of, in a way, the same solution, but different. It's just like setting back the same thing to counteract the thing that's going to kill us all.
Yes.
In a way. I don't know.
But also, like, recognizing that there is some capacity for empathy in some of the machines as well with Misaki. And maybe that ties into what we're going to talk about in a second with, like, the Terminator tells Kenta is the oldest kid's name. He's like, oh, in the future, you broker a peace between machines and humans. We'll talk about that in a second. But then we also have, like, the Terminator in Terminator 2 being, like, developing some approximation of, like, human emotion, at least. So it's like there is capacity for more than just destruction from the machines, just like there is for humanity as well.
Exactly.
And Malcolm, just the way he's operating, like, from the, like, he's doing all of this to save his kids, right? Like, that's his objective. He wants them to live and have a chance to, like, exist. But to them, he's like this cold and distant father who is machine-like in a lot of ways, and he only cares about work, but because they don't know what he's doing or why.
Yeah, like, he's just absent every day from their lives.
But let's talk about the Terminator itself, voiced by Timothy Olyphant. I loved just one little thing I loved about this, because the Terminators in all these movies are, like, very resourceful, and I love that once Judgment Day happens and Kokoro's takeover occurs, he uses the heads of one of her little robots as, like, a disguise to navigate through her territory. I thought that was so neat, and just visually it set him apart from Terminators of the past, because he had, like, a little extra appendage, and you just like lift up the coat. It was really neat. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, resourceful. That is such a good word. That was the word I was looking for when I was writing the show notes too, because I thought that some of the stuff that he did here was so creative. It was so resourceful. It was so cool. Like, I really enjoyed how he used the temple as his, like, little base, his little quiet space to repair himself, make adjustments, like create that little crossbow and attach it to himself and reload. And it was also, like, fascinating that he would choose a temple to begin with, because it's such a spiritual place for people to
Mm-hmm.
go, and that I think kind of ties into like, well, there's a lack of spirituality among these people, or just like that's something that people are not thinking about anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and the only person there is the lone monk that he just killed. Just like
Yeah.
that's it. Now it's his place. But yeah, how the Terminator was so like creative, improvisational in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It was really neat. And someone else pointed this out to me online too, but Japan has considerably lower gun ownership rates than America.
Yeah.
And so him coming up with the crossbow solution, pretty effective.
Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that either. But we got some sirens.
Sorry,
right.
it's gone now. It's gone.
All right. But I also liked how it keeps the franchise trend of him really only speaking or bothering to emote when he's around other people and needs to blend in and infiltrate to interact with them.
Yeah.
Because he's just a machine. He's strictly following his programming. So why would he need to quip or talk to himself when he's by himself? That's not the programming, so he doesn't do it. And it makes it really like in the first one, the Terminator is like a slasher villain in a lot of ways. It's kind of this brute force of nature, and it's very scary. The horror nature of it doesn't really carry through to the next films in the series, but that's part of it that is really cool to see. But I do have a question for you about the Terminator.
Yes.
At the end, he presents Kenta with a choice. And he's like, oh, you as an adult sent me back in time because you brokered a peace between machines and humanity. Do you believe him?
I don't really. And I also don't know entirely whether I believe him or not because of a few reasons. I think that I doubt that humanity and Skynet would ever really get to a point where peace could be brokered unless this whole thing happens where, we break their defenses, we find some way to level the playing field, which seems like a big if.
Yeah.
And so that part feels like a big lie to me, especially since Skynet just wants to kill us all. And I don't see why they would ever stop doing that mission. And the Terminator here, in this instance, he needs to complete his mission. So why would he not manipulate Kenta and try to get him to try to use him at this moment? However, I could see Kenta eventually going down that path of arbitrator, and because he knows how machines think, he knows how they operate. Like we see him tinkering with things and like messing around with parts for the entire series, and he has this confrontation with Matsuki or Misaki,
his little sister. Oh, Misaki, yeah,
where he's like, you're the reason why you feel things is because it's programmed into you. Like it's all about programming. Like it doesn't matter what's going on in your head. Like he just understands programming very well.
Yeah,
and so. And assuming that his father dies in a similar way in the Terminator's, past timeline or whatever, I could see Kenta being even more motivated to follow through on his father's footsteps and achieve that peaceful resolution. So I don't know. My inclination is to say it's a lie. What do you think?
I think it's a lie as well. And actually, as you were talking, I settled more into that because of what you were saying about Kenta, because you're right, he's a tinkerer and he understands the machines, but I don't think he would seek peace with the machines because he has no empathy for the machines. Maybe he's developing some for Misaki by the end, but his like the way he treats the little cat thingy, at the beginning, like his sister wants to treat it like a pet and he just wants to mess with it. Like he's very cold in his approach to it because it's just a machine. So I don't know if that character specifically would be the one to broker a peace because he would just view them as a hostile program.
Yeah.
And also I know we'll talk about the Terminator timelines in a little bit, but I know that this is like a splintered timeline thing or whatever, but in Terminator canon, I think from from even the first film. I don't remember when the idea is first introduced, but like the Terminator gets sent back in time to kill Sarah and prevent John from being born as like a last ditch effort by Skynet. Like humanity is in the process of winning the final battle of the war when that Terminator is sent back in time, and Kyle is sent back to make sure that John still gets born as a result of that. So like, unless this is a drastically different series of events, there is no peace between humanity and Skynet. The war ends with a victory.
Yeah. Well, and I was reading some articles online too that pointed out that we get to see these other, it's splinter timeline, whatever, these other parts of the future where it's like 2030, 2040, that are way beyond like when Malcolm's born and stuff like that, and then he gets sent back in time. And we still see this fight continuing to drag on. And one of the articles pointed out that John Connor, like, he stops them in like 2022 or something like that.
Oh,
like that's when it was supposed to end, or at least sometime like that. Like, that's when.
Well, with the original Judgment Day timeline, you're probably right, because they push it back in Terminator 1, I think.
Yeah, I think so. It's so.
Or no, they push it back in Terminator 2 because it's supposed to be 1997, and then because they win in Terminator 2, they can't see when Judgment Day is going to happen anymore. And then in Terminator 3, I think it happens in like, I don't fucking know, like however old John Connor is in that movie.
Yeah, it just keeps getting more confusing. But just the fact that the war continued to go on after that deadline, I suppose, there's this kind of potential implication of, well, did John Connor actually end the war? Like, is the war still ongoing? Like, did this all kind of... did any of it mean anything, really, at this point? Because the war just keeps going forever.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right. It says under leadership of John Connor, the human resistance eventually destroyed Skynet's defense grid in 2029. As a last effort, Skynet sent a cyborg Terminator, Model 101, back in time to 1984 to kill Connor's mother, Sarah, before she could give birth. Okay, yeah, so splinter timeline, things are different. Who knows?
Yeah. But I do like the Terminator that we got in this in Terminator Zero here. He's very intimidating. There's so many cool sequences of him just being such an imposing threat. Like when he's like getting up and walking out of the water after crashing that truck, it's just like it was just breathtaking in a way. He's just so scary looking.
And the series does a great job of making him feel like a pretty insane threat. And I think one of the great ways it does that is it introduces at a certain point like a couple of police officer characters who, you know, in a lot of shows you can be like, oh, these are going to be like supporting characters of the cast going forward. The younger one especially has like, oh, this guy has like, you know, anime character energy. He'll be around for a little bit, and then they both get fucking wasted by the Terminator in that same episode. Yeah. and like that also ties into in the first movie, the "I'll be back" line is in a police station, and he comes back and drives the police car into the station and kills a bunch of cops in that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
But yeah, and he's just fucking dangerous and interesting. And this ties into Misaki, but like when he gets in range of another character, it's like the show does a great job of making you think it's like, oh, they're dead. They're fucked.
There's no way they're getting out of this unless there's a hole in the wall they can squeeze through real quick.
Yep.
He's brutal.
Yeah, but speaking of that and, you know, robot characters, let's talk about the other main Terminator character, Misaki, who's like the nanny of the kids, or so it would seem. But yeah, go for it.
A Terminator turned housekeeper. Yeah, I did not see that reveal coming, that she was a robot / former Terminator model. But I thought that was a great twist to just throw that in there, that she came back with Malcolm, that she was kind of Kokoro 1.0, V1, and then Kokoro is just Misaki 2.0, basically.
Yes.
But yeah, I thought that was such a great reveal there.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming either until the moment that the Terminator grabbed her arm, and I had like the oh shit realization right before he rips it off and reveals the metal skeleton beneath. But I really liked the concept of this character, and I like the way she fought too. Like the way she moves is so elegant compared to how brutal Oliphant's Terminator is. It's just a really nice contrast. And like there's that scene where they're ambushed by those people who are hiding out after Kokoro takes over, and she's just like kind of dancing, like fighting in a very balletic, is that a word?
Yeah. I think it is. But like very much like I got like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon vibes, you know, where they're just like jumping from branch to branch. It kind of just felt like she was doing that with them as well. Very graceful, very artful, very demure.
But I really like the element too of her. She's a machine, but she has no memory of being one, and it gives her a little bit of an existential crisis. And another little tie into the franchise is like that's what Sam Worthington's Terminator in Terminator Salvation is like. Remember, like in the first half of the movie, he doesn't know he's a machine until he gets like blown up and his skeleton is revealed. And
I don't remember that.
Yeah, well,
I'll take your word for it.
But I mean, just granted, the showrunner like specifically said he likes Salvation. I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of a connection to that entry in the franchise about like maybe there are Terminators who don't even know what they are living amongst us at all times.
Dude, it's a bunch of Cylons around us. From Battlestar Galactica. But I think that Misaki, she such a neat character, and she added more complexity to the story because she's this Terminator who's been reprogrammed in a way, and she has no desire to really kill except those individuals who threaten people that she loves. She has emotions, she has feelings, even though she is a machine. And like I think we pointed out earlier, like Kenta at one point, he says, those are programmed into you. Like, we can't trust you because you're just logical programming sequences. That's all that your mind is. But even if that's true, you can't deny the existence of those feelings. Like, how can you? And it kind of begs this question of, can you differentiate between real and programmed emotions here? Or like, who's to say what is a real emotion at the end of the day, between an emotion that a computer feels and the emotion that you and I feel every day?
Right. Very Blade Runner coded of it, I'd say.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, in Blade Runner, it's like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't, like life is life, and you are the sum of the experiences you've had and how they affected you, and like that's. God, we got to talk about the Blade Runner movies at some point. But yeah, like at the end of the movie, who would argue that Roy Batty is not just as human and as alive as any other character in the movie? Like nobody could make that claim. But it also, another fun element is like it adds an extra layer of tension between Misaki and Kenta for one, but also Aiko, the soldier from the future, because like this is the enemy that she's fought her entire life, and now she has to team up, which is kind of a similar dynamic to what Sarah Connor and the Terminator in T2 have, because oh god, I wish I had seen Terminator 2 before, in the right order, so that I didn't know about the twist that Arnold's Terminator was good. And did you know that they apparently spoiled that twist in the trailer for Terminator 2?
I had no idea.
God, what a fuck up. Can you imagine being in a theater, seeing that for the first time and not know, like, it would be so perfect, whatever. But that similar dynamic there. And I like how the character of Aiko is sort of a combination Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor in a lot of ways. Like, she is a soldier sent back from the future to prevent Judgment Day, like Kyle. But through time travel shenanigans, she is also the mother of this show's potential savior figure in Malcolm, like Sarah. And the series has a lot of little twists on similar franchise elements like this. But I found this character really fun, partially because of that.
Yeah, I liked Aiko, and it's kind of like a merger of the two of these, the John Connor, just like you're saying, and Sarah Connor, Kyle Reese meshed together. And I didn't see that coming, that Aiko was Malcolm's mom.
I know,
from a splintered timeline. That was a great reveal, but looking back, it's like, yep, that totally makes sense. It all adds up, and it adds layers again. Layers of complexity to this narrative, to this franchise. Because, Aiko doesn't really have these memories of being a mom.
Yeah, because she hasn't lived them yet.
Exactly. She was never one. She was never a mother of Malcolm. But once Malcolm time traveled, it radically changed her timeline, her storyline, and her background. She's a different person now than the mother that he knew. Which is something that I kind of wish they explored a little more, but I think they did just enough to make it interesting.
Well, I thought when I was watching it, because before Aiko travels back in time, she has like the like ginger girl is her friend or love interest or something. It's not clear what their dynamic is, but when we're getting Malcolm's flashbacks, that girl is the one delivering him. And I remember being like, what's going on here? What the fuck? What's up with this? And I think it's not that. I don't even think it's because Malcolm traveled back in time and changed her destiny. I think it's just she is on a path now in this post-apocalypse to eventually she will meet someone and fall in love and give birth to Malcolm. And it's like another, and then eventually he'll be sent back in time through his own thing to do. I mean, I think you can't think about the Terminator timeline too much.
I know. Well, and there's like this whole bit too where he was just like, yeah, let's just go on down to the time machine and let's hop on in. It's like, so anyone can use the time machine at any time? What the hell? Why is everyone not just going back constantly? Maybe I was just reading that too quickly.
Well, I think he made it in secret and it's hard to make. Like and it's a one-way trip. Yeah. So I think that was the limitation of it. Is like he spent a lot of time making the resources to do it, and he was going in secret. And then when he and Mikasa, fuck, I knew I was gonna do that.
I kept doing that too.
Misaki get caught, which is another element that I liked, where it's like as soon as the Resistance in the future sees that he's been making a fucking machine in their base, they're like, are you insane? And then they try to kill him right away. But yeah, I think they just were like, their hand was forced. They probably had more work they wanted to do, but they had to go back.
Yeah. But I like Iko. She's fun. Or Iko. She's a cool character. Really badass. Fits the Kyle Reese mold incredibly well, I would say. Yeah.
One thing I also really liked was how Judgment Day is used in the show and where they decided to place it within the season. I think every Terminator entry so far is either entirely before Judgment Day happens or entirely after, and this one is like right in the middle. It occurs, and it's like a pretty. The music worked really well in that scene. It's very devastating and just like upsetting to watch and think about. But it also gives very distinct feelings to the first and second half of the season. And it allows us to explore a time frame in the Terminator universe that I think up until this point we've entirely skipped over, and that's the immediate aftermath. We also get to see a fresh take on Judgment Day because Kokoro protects Japan from Skynet's nuclear attack, but also initiates her own violent and apocalyptic takeover.
Yeah, that part was very ominous. Ooh.
Yeah. Like, they go to the hospital, and then the doctors are like screaming, like, help, help, and then they all get fucking wasted by those robots. But it just provides a setting that is unique for the series, but still centers around this pivotal event that we know so well from previous entries.
Well, yeah, and it was interesting to like something we didn't even really talk about was like the Enos, like just the standard robots walking around everywhere, because kind of like the initial, very very initial like ancestor of just like these Terminators, walking around and helping people in everyday life, and then halfway through the series, once you pass the halfway point, they just become soldiers, basically, like remorseless soldiers who are just like, yep, I'll shoot you if I need to. I don't care. I'm just here to do what Kokoro is telling me to do, and that
like
was
martial law.
Yeah, which it's a cool thing to like add in, because like there's so many of them too. I feel like they like showed some, like, at one point they're just overwhelming the military. It just feels kind of like a zombie movie where just like it's too many are overwhelming.
I was thinking that too. It had very zombie movie vibes in that part, which I thought was really cool for this franchise. A very different flavor. And you have that moment because if they perceive a human as a threat, they shoot immediately. And there's that, I think it's one of the kids is about to pick up a gun, remember? And Misaki's just like, no. And then it pans over to the Eno just like about to fucking murder them.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, you're not a threat. Let's move on. Which kind of made me unclear about what happened in the hospital, because it seemed like they were just killing all the medical staff. So I was like, they're medical staff. Why are you killing them?
Yeah,
but maybe if they have scalpels and stuff, and you're already killing their friends, you can make the argument they're a perceived threat. Whatever. That was like the one thing that wasn't very clear to me. But
that's a good point. Maybe it's... Does Kokoro start out by just killing everybody until her conversation with Malcolm progresses to a certain point, or is it always just the...
I think it was always just the martial law.
Okay.
But discriminate martial law.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe there was like some law enforcement in the hospital or something, and
that's
they
probably
initiated the violence.
I'm thinking about
like
it
they
too
do.
hard. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, one other thing that you shouldn't think too hard about in the Terminator series is the time travel stuff, because like we've been alluding to this whole podcast, it can get very confusing very quickly, and it just spirals out of control. Like how do the timelines splinter off, all this other stuff. But yeah, one of the things that I liked a lot about Terminator Zero was how they made that paradoxical nature of the time travel and the general Terminator formula of going back in time. They've made that like a central talking point in this very pivotal crux of the show. When one warrior is sent back in time, another rises to meet it, and the cycle repeats again and again with no
splinters and splinters.
Yeah, splinters and splinters. Like nothing really changes. Instead, it's just this time loop in a way. It just keeps going, cycle and cycle and cycle. And yeah, small things may be different. Like maybe you move Judgment Day a few years down the road or something like that, or you change a few different things. But like the general framework, it's still going to happen, and it's still the same. And Malcolm approaches the problem differently, where he's like, well, what if I try to proactively stop Skynet with Kokoro? And which I think it's very creative, but I think the series, I like how they planted some seeds in there that kind of implied that maybe Malcolm and Aiko and everyone else is just kind of also stuck in their own time loop as well.
Yeah.
Which even though it felt like that they were successful by the end of this first season here, but it's like, this is maybe they're stuck and they're not really changing much as well. But I'm very glad that they talked about this time travel paradox stuff and how the timeline is like splintering, is changing. You're not really changing your current timeline, you're just creating a new one.
Right, because by going back into the past, you being there fundamentally changes what happened. And then that now becomes your future. So you going to like it's confusing to talk about, but it's like it's like if every instance of time travel was what happens in Sound of Thunder, right? Like you go back in time. In Sound of Thunder, he steps off the path once, and that's the butterfly effect. That's what it comes from. I think it's what it comes from. But this implied in this rule, it's like, no, you don't even have to step off the path. It's just you existing in this space means it is now a different space than has ever existed before, and so you are on your own journey now. But one thing that I really liked about the time travel and the paradoxical elements of this series, like especially how it's portrayed here, is just how selfless it makes the time traveler. Because Keiko, wait, is that her name? Am I getting it right? Echo. Aiko. She's like, if none of the people I love are helped, like what's the point of this? And it's like, because your world will never be saved. Your loved ones will never be saved. You'll never see them again. But you are fighting for the benefit of this new timeline. And their loved ones, their world might be saved, and they will never know the benefit of the peace that you've brought them. It kind of goes back to that like Greek proverb where it's like society prospers when old men plant seeds for the trees whose shade they will never sit or whatever.
Yep.
It's like it's kind of like that. It's like, no, you have to do this because it will create a time where people will get to live, and that is a worthy pursuit. You know, like the people of this new splinter timeline, they have a chance of peace because of what you're doing. We don't, but they might.
Right.
Yeah, and it also gives a new spin on the franchise's famous line, which is a line I love. No fate but what they make, or no fate but what we make. Because in this franchise now, it's like explicit. When you time travel, you are creating a new fate that did not exist before.
Yeah, they did spell that out very clearly with the old lady with the incense that she was waving around. It's like, it's not just a straight line; it's more of a zigzag, and we're fucking things up. And it is confusing and paradoxical. And the more you think about it, the more your head hurts. So you don't need to think about it too much. I think it's kind of like, you know, when you watch Back to the Future and you're like, yeah, I'm not really going to think about if this makes sense or not. I'm just going to enjoy the ride and see and just watch Michael J. Fox do these fun things.
Right. The time travel in Terminator, don't think about it logically or chronologically. Think about it in terms of it is a setup for a premise, and think about it thematically. It's not like where it fits in the timeline. It's never going to work. Don't even bother.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to. That's not the point.
Yeah, exactly. But I did like how, the Terminator Zero, they addressed that paradox of the Terminator head on. They didn't just kind of shy away from it. And, you know, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think any of the other films have really made this a talking point. It's just been kind of more of like, yeah, we just got to do this thing so this thing doesn't happen, or this thing happens. It's not so much like thinking critically about the time travel element of it or everything like that.
Yeah, and let me think. I guess in Genesis you see the future before Kyle goes back in time. But in the first 3 and even in Salvation, like, time travel is only a direct factor in the first 3, and we don't see it happen. We just are told, like, I came back in time to protect you. I was sent by this person. We got to protect you, and that's what it's about. And then in Salvation, it's like Kyle Reese is a young man who meets John Connor, and they don't time travel in that one. Genesis does weirder shit with it, but Matt Smith is the personification of Skynet, and transforms John Connor into nano machine. I'm not done. And transfers John Connor into like nano machines or something. Right as Kyle is in the time machine, he's like, "No!" And that's supposed to explain why Kyle kind of like falls on the ground when he goes back to the 90s. Weird movie. Yeah.
Okay.
And then nano machine John Connor goes into the 2019s or 2020s and runs into Sarah and Kyle there, and then Skynet is a big Matt Smith face in the company. It's not a good movie. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't think I'm ever gonna watch that.
No. But I had a point with that, but I forgot.
It'll come to you. We'll see. Well, in the meantime, I Googled just to see, is this one season series or two? It's not really confirmed right now from what I can tell. So I think, yeah, I'd like to see another season of this, because not only do I like the art style and just the creative direction here, and just all these characters I think are just fascinating and cool, I'm also just curious to see what happens next. Like, yes, Kokoro is safe, Japan is safe right now, but Skynet is still very much a threat at this
safe.
Yes, as safe as they can be, I guess. And I'm just curious, especially like what's going to happen next with Kokoro, and what's she going to do next with Skynet, with the Terminator skull. Is she going to like defend humanity? Will she fight Skynet, or will she be destroyed by Skynet? Is she going to be corrupted? Like, what's I'm fascinated to see what happens next with this.
Yeah, I would also like to see more from this. It definitely leaves itself open to a continuation, but it also ends in a similar way to how like most of the Terminator movies end, right? They're all very open-ended. And I did remember what I was going to say. You were right. Like the most definitive adjustment to the timeline we get is in Terminator 2, and it's basically just Sarah saying like, I can't see Judgment Day anymore. Like, I don't know what's next. So they don't know how they've changed fate or the fate that they've made. And this is very similar. It's like they go into the underground to hide away. Kokoro sees them, and they know that. But I would like I enjoy the tentative truce Kokoro and at least our main cast of characters have at the end here, even though Kokoro is still like in total control of all the other people and has her violent martial law. I think that could be a really interesting dynamic to explore going forward. And also, it would be like, it does seem in the future scenes with Aiko before she comes back, it is very much the typical future apocalypse of the Terminator movies, you know, the sun blotted out and everything. So does that still happen in this timeline? If so, how? I think it'd be interesting if Skynet tried like a land and sea invasion of Japan, since Kokoro's blocking out the nukes, and then you get like our main character stuck in the middle of this war between two factions of machines and having to survive in that. I think that could be really unique as well.
I like that.
But yeah, any final thoughts on Terminator Zero?
No, I don't think so, but I want to see more of this. I just do. I think this is really cool. If you're a Terminator fan, I think you'll find a lot of value in this series and lots of things to widen the lore, the discussion around Terminator, and get us out of the John Connor, Sarah Connor funk. What about you? Any final thoughts?
No, I liked it a lot. I'd recommend it to people. It's a pretty enjoyable series. It's only 8 episodes as well, so you could watch it in a couple nights pretty easily. But with that, let's transition into our final segment of the show. And we'll start with, we're going to do a little extra thing. We're going to do a mini review of something that Niles just saw, Alien Romulus. So you want to start
Yeah.
us off there?
Yeah, Alien Romulus. It's the newest Alien film, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the newest ones, I suppose. I don't know how to better describe that, but it's I liked it overall as a Alien movie, and I think it fits well within the franchise. It feels like a classic Alien film
Mm-hmm.
overall. Visuals are really cool, but I have some gripes with it. Again,
Yeah.
I think the first half is really cool and creative and innovative, but then the second half kind of just feels more of the same from like the original films. I think it could have been a little bit more creative, and when you boil down the plot,
Mm-hmm.
it is just we're stuck on a ship and there's an alien.
Yeah.
It's killing all of us, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's been out long enough. I think we can do spoilers a little bit for it. But I think visually it's great. It's very well executed. The sound design is great as well. Main cast of characters I liked, but it does very much feel like an Alien and Aliens greatest hits movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, ooh, what if we combine these two distinct and most beloved entries in the franchise into one thing? And also the using AI and CGI to resurrect a dead actor as a character is gross again.
That is the worst part of this entire movie, is how they made a dead actor a central character in the movie to push the plot along. It's so nonsensical, it hurts my head.
Yeah, and like, just to preempt anyone who's saying this, because like his estate gave consent to do that. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
He's not his estate. He's not his family. He's dead. Dead people cannot give consent to have their likeness used. And, you know, we can blame Star Wars and Star Wars fans for this shit becoming so mainstream because people clapped like fucking seals when it happened with Tarkin, and even more so when it happened with Luke. I know Mark Hamill's not dead. It's not the same. But it's and this example is especially weird because you have one, an android character in this movie. You could have used him in that role, or you could have used the actors who have played the other two prominent androids in the series, both of whom are still alive and could have acted.
Or someone new entirely. You had an entire new actor in this one for an android. Why do you need to go back to one who's dead?
Yeah.
Like, it's so gross. It's the worst part of the movie.
Mm-hmm. But I did enjoy the atmosphere of the film. I enjoyed the desperation, and I think the centering of the whole thing on just how horrible life is for people who work for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Really, you know, it did a great job of zeroing in on something that's always been present in the movies. It's like, oh, the villain is this mega capitalist corporation who just forces people into horrible living conditions on awful planets. And it's like, I like the premise of exploring a group of young people who are desperate and think they've found a way out. And then they get totally fucked.
Yeah. Just eviscerated. It's great. It's a great film if you can overlook the dead actor, CGI, AI. All the pieces are there.
Yeah. I liked the freak ass monster at the end.
Yeah.
The girl injects herself with the Prometheus goo, and she's pregnant, and she gives birth to a really disturbing thing that immediately goes to kill her. It's really upsetting to look at, and I like the creature design. And I mean, speaking of Prometheus, though, like I like Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and despite being made, well, I guess maybe because it is made by the original creator of Alien, who wants to take the franchise in a different direction, like, it is doing more new things with the franchise than this movie is. And I would like to see the Prometheus trilogy get a conclusion. Because Michael Fassbender's David is such an interesting little freak. I want to see what he does next.
Yeah, I need to watch Covenant. I need to watch that one.
Yeah, David gets up to some bullshit in that movie. It's awesome.
What a sick little fuck.
Yeah. But we can transition to the rest of other stuff now. I just thought, since you've seen it.
Let's do that.
All right,
so otherwise lately, been watching Chaos. It is a Netflix series about it's just kind of like an adaptation of like Greek gods. It's kind of like
it's with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. Like it's got a huge, like, lots of cool actors in it. Like Jeff Goldblum is probably the most recognizable, but it's got the guy, I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who played Remus in Harry Potter.
David Thewlis.
Yes, he's in it. Yeah, he's good. He's Hades.
Oh, fun. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool. I'm kind of half watching it, to be honest. Okay. I'm not like in love with it, but it's cool. I don't mind the premise. And then last night we watched this new movie with Olivia Colman and blanking on the other actress's name. Let me look that up real quick. But it's called Wicked Little Letters. Let me get all of that. Yeah, Jesse Buckley and Olivia Colman. Really awesome movie. It's like set in like 1920s Little Hampton of the UK, where these two neighbors have this kind of like little spat between the two of them, and it's actually based on a real story that happened in that real world town of just like this one of the neighbors was receiving these horrible fucking letters that are just like cursing her out, calling her a whore, like all this terrible name calling bullshit. She's just got like dozens of these letters, and they think it's the neighbor next door. And it's just like kind of this whole story about like these two families and like how the story behind these letters. It's really cool. I really like that. Really like this movie. And it is kind of like this whole argument about like, oh, you know, chastity and purity and, you know, a good woman living at home versus like someone who's not married and has a kid and, you know, looked down upon. So she must be kind of the person sending the letters, kind of moral panic type of movie. I would recommend it. It's a lot of fun. But that's it for me. Dylan, what have you been up to?
Quite a lot. So I'll go through it kind of quickly. So, oh my God, the highlights. No.
Sorry.
It's like, don't delete everything. So I watched the original Beetlejuice for the first time.
Nice.
Quite a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Very funny movie. Yeah, cool. You know, like Tim Burton, lots of funny little guys, little creatures running about. And Michael Keaton is a gross freak in it, which is great. I was surprised by how little Beetlejuice is in Beetlejuice. But he's not the main character at all.
Yeah, right.
It's like Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis are the main characters. And I don't even want to spoil the premise of it for you because I don't think you've seen the movie, right?
I've not seen it, no.
Yeah, okay. Fun movie. But then I also went to see Beetlejuice in theaters. Also a great bit of fun. You know,
Yay.
Just nice to just go see a fun movie. I am baffled that they're putting it on digital download in October. Seems like a great movie to go see during the Halloween season, but whatever. Yeah. What do I know? I'm not some big Hollywood executive. Also, continuing to play World of Warcraft War Within a little bit, not a whole lot. I need to catch up, but I've been mostly playing Star Wars Outlaws, which is really fun, in my opinion. It's like, you know, got a lot of the typical open world problems and stuff, but you play as this thief, Kay Vess, set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and you basically like get put in a bad situation and have to put together a crew for a big heist. And all the while you're doing that, you are taking jobs from the various different criminal syndicates in the Star Wars universe. So you got the Hutts, you got the Pikes, you've got the Ashiga, which I don't know if they existed before, but they're like kind of bug people a little bit. And then you have Crimson Dawn, led by the character Kira, Emilia Clarke's character from Solo, who's now the head of that syndicate. And I like, the system isn't perfect. There are like iterations I'd like them to do if they get a sequel, but it's like you have a reputation with each of the different crime syndicates, and oftentimes if you do something that increases your rep with another one, it decreases it with a different one. And if you have good rep with a syndicate, you can walk around their districts in the towns and planets like freely, which can make missions in those areas easier. So it's kind of like it's really neat. So like, I think the rhythm it wants you to do is like, oh, I have to get this thing out of the Pike district. Like, let me take a couple jobs for the Pikes, get my reputation up a little bit with them, so I can like move without being shot in their space. And it's cool. And the lead character's charming, and I think, you know, it's a different type of Star Wars story, which is great. It's nice that we're getting Star Wars video games more regularly. I also watched on Netflix Rebel Ridge, which I would really recommend. I got a lot of Rambo First Blood vibes from it, but more along racial lines as well. It follows a young black man who is a veteran. He is trying to get to a courthouse on his bike to bail his cousin out of jail for reasons that become clear later on. And a cop runs him off the road intentionally and, you know, writes him up for like failing to pull over and all this stuff, and basically makes his life living hell and does a civil asset forfeiture of the bail money. And Don Johnson is also in it. He plays like the police chief of this small town, and it's like a revenge movie of this guy just going fucking ham against the police department of this local town and uncovering corruption. It's really good.
Hell yeah. I'm all about that.
Let me look up the main actor's name, because he was awesome. And I've not seen him in stuff before. Aaron Pierre is the lead. James Cromwell was in it as well. But it's on Netflix, and since you're subscribed to Netflix skin for the moment, I would check it out.
Okay.
I also read Brandon Sanderson's The Sunlit Man, his latest in his Cosmere franchise. Enjoyed that a lot. Only Murders in the Building, watching that as well. Fun show. Right. Rings of Power, I'm enjoying this new season a lot as well. I think season 2 is a lot stronger than season 1, and it's satisfying to watch just like an evil plan coming together. Like we all know, like the show is Rings of Power. It's about the forging of the Great Rings. Sauron deceives everyone into making them, and like season 2, there's a lot of getting to watch that happen. And it's very tragic watching all these like well-intentioned people get fooled into their doom. And then this week I started reading Dune Messiah. Not very far into it yet, but I'm excited to see where it goes. So far I'm liking it. I like that, like the opening scene is just like a conspiracy meeting. It's like, all right, how do we kill Paul Atreides? It's like the beginning of the book.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the last thing I did was I watched the fucking debate. It was, you know, made some strong drinks and watched it, and it sucked, but you know, I watched it.
You did it.
I did it.
That's better than me. I didn't watch it, so.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, summary of that was Kamala was horrible on the border in Palestine and pretty good on everything else, and she very clearly won the debate. Trump sounded like a deranged lunatic, and spouted blood libel towards Haitian migrants brought to him by his VP candidate. So that's good.
So stupid and frustrating.
Yeah, they got a bomb threat in Springfield as a result of that. So cool that we have a stochastic terrorist on the fucking presidential ballot. But anywho, that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you all for being understanding. on us taking a week off to get our mental health sorted a little bit. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I think we might talk about Megalopolis unless something else comes up. But yeah, Niles, where can people find you online until then?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, what about you? Where can people follow you online?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, on Twitch maybe at D-Day_movies. And you can find us both here at Play Pause Rewind, both on YouTube and your podcast platform of choice, as well as our second channel, Play Pause Rewind Videos, and on TikTok. All of that is going to be linked down in the description. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. It really means a lot. We enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
We'll see y'all next time. Stay safe out there. Goodbye.
Bye.